The 15th chapter, in which Lord Montfallcon is dismayed by his news and begins to regret his poor diplomacy. Lord Montfallcon lay alone in his substantial bed while his wives in the next chamber rubbed ointments into one another's wounds, whispering and gasping. He was miserable, unreconciled, self-loathing that morning, for Gloriana's voice had sounded through the night, pathetic and full of grief, and he had awakened his wives so that their cries would drown the Queen's. Montfallcon moved his strong old body in the bed and rebuked himself for his lack of vigour, and wondered if, at this time of delicate crisis, his brain, which had held so much, controlled so much, was at last about to fail. The Queen was recently more melancholy than ever, and he could not name the cause. She had cleverly avoided the question of marriage when he had raised it. Lord Montfallcon had also received news of Tom Fine's capture in the Middle Sea. The old pirate, growing short-sighted, had mistaken an Arabian barkentine for an Iberian bark, and now Arabia complained loudly and at length, ritualistically, though the mistake was obvious. Then, in the middle of all this, Sir Christopher Martin had died, poisoned apparently by his own hand, as if he felt dishonoured. This was a bad omen to nobles and to commons. There were rumours of a quarrel between King Casimir and the Grand Caliph, other rumours of a pact between them. There were rumours out of Tartary, rumours from the German and Flemish states, from Iberia and the High Countries, from Africa and from Asia, and Quire, his eye, his hand, his weapon in the world, was missing. Whether Quire, offended by Montfallcon's undiplomatic response during their last encounter, played doxy on a high horse to further his own ends, whether his pride was genuinely wounded, whether he had taken a notion to visit foreign lands or even seek foreign employ, or whether he had paid a price at last for his crimes, Montfallcon did not know. And of all things, Lord Montfallcon hated ignorance. It was his impulse, his necessity to be omniscient. Now, not only was his main well of knowledge run dry, but the very location of that well was lost. Frustrated, having no news on which he could base his further actions, Montfallcon knew a kind of terror, as a warrior in the heat of battle might feel to receive a hint of imminent paralysis and blindness. It seemed to Montfallcon that unseen enemies were creeping closer, and that all he could sense of them was their unspecific malice. He had failed to understand his tool, Quire, with sufficient complexity. He had imposed a view of the man's strange character upon the truth. He had broken a rule of his own, which was never to assume, always to interpret. And because of one lazy failure to interpret Quire, he might have lost his control over the man. Quire worked for the love of his art as Montfallcon worked for the love of his ideal, represented in Gloriana. Their partnership, Montfallcon realised, had depended upon that understanding, but he had resented Quire's suggestion that they were equal, that they collaborated as poets collaborate upon a play. In the past, Montfallcon had trained himself to deny any expression of pride which might be false or which might threaten his goal, but in his last interview with Quire, he had let his anger, his arrogance dominate him, and so clash with Quire's own pride. He understood now that if Quire had attacked him on like grounds, accusing him, say, of base motives in his work for Albion, he might have felt the same fury. And yet Montfallcon respected Quire's intelligence. It did not seem typical of the man that he should sulk this long. A day or two, certainly. Even a week. It had been a month. It occurred to Montfallcon that Quire might be planning some sort of vengeance against him, but Quire's particular nature was not of the sort to turn to petty revenge. More likely Quire proved himself, performing some complicated espionage, the results of which he would present to Montfallcon by way of a challenge. Montfallcon, however, could be sure of none of this. Because he had misjudged once, he had lost some of his faith in his own judgment. He could misjudge again. With a groan, he floundered from sheets which stank of lavender and sweat. He must prepare himself for the day. The snag-toothed knave, Quire's lieutenant, in his coney cap and his over-large leather greatcoat, his gallooned doublet, his puffed hose, and turned-down jack-boots, who waited for Lord Montfallcon in the small chamber, striking a pose with long sword and cocked leg, was a sight to encourage Montfallcon that morning, so that he greeted Tinkler almost merrily, inquiring after his health and his fortunes. He bustled in his usual grey and black to his desk, where it seemed more paper than usual had gathered. He frowned. "Well, Master Tinkler." "My lord?" "You've news of Captain Quire?" "No, my lord." "Well, nothing certain. I came because I thought you might reassure me. Also, the debts mount, you know, and the captain has not paid me in a month. I still work on his behalf." Montfallcon studied a letter from Bantustan. "Eh? What is it then, Master Tinkler? You've come for gold?" "Or silver, sir. Something to keep me going until Captain Quire returns, or—" "Have you heard aught of Quire?" "Well, there was some gossip, my lord, but that's all. When we left you here last, we went together to the Aries Gate, and then parted, agreeing to meet a few hours later. He never found me at the inn, and to my knowledge has never been there since. The gossip concerned a scuffle by the Aries Gate. The captain, or someone like him, was attacked and carried off, either dead or wounded." "By whom?" "Well, no witnesses, sir. This news is all indirect, you see. A child saw it, maybe, or a housewife behind a curtain. There's other rumours followed, but Captain Quire has taught me well. I go to the core, and at the core remain, until there's more discovered." "You pursued the tale?" "Of course, sir, for Captain Quire's my friend, and my benefactor, and more. I asked at every house. I inquired the direction of every cart coming from the Aries Gate. I made inquiries of every ruffler and cut-purse I could find. It seems that a gang was recruited, and that Captain Quire might have been their prey. But I know not who they are, nor who employed them, nor why they were employed." "Well, there's an angel for you, Tinkler." Montfallcon stretched his hand towards the scrawny rogue. "And I'll have more if you can prove Captain Quire's whereabouts or his fate." "You think he's dead?" "And the Saracens are said to have been seeking him." "It is not their custom to hide the body of a man on whom they've taken vengeance. They would display Quire." "True. I've seen more than one corpse of theirs when I was the captain on that errand in the Middle Sea, my lord." Lord Montfallcon wondered if Tinkler spoke significantly to remind him of service given to Albion. He looked at the thin-faced, snag-toothed scarecrow, fearing that he misjudged him too, and that he might dismiss another Quire. But Tinkler, glad of the gold, anxious to placate him, miserable as a dog deserted by its master, was not a substitute for the clever little Quire. Lord Montfallcon became bitter. There had never been a servant as quick and brilliant. He had lost the bet. "If you see him, Master Tinkler, should he live, you'll give him my most anxious felicitations." "I shall, sir, of course. We're both loyal men, sir." "Aye." Montfallcon picked up a letter in code from Bohemia. "You'll point out to him how much I miss him, how much the Empire needs him, how greatly his skills and his arts are appreciated here. It's what he was wondering about, my lord. That? What? Whether you appreciated how finely he performed the deeds you set him. With what perfection he planned and composed his plots, to make all neat, to divert suspicion, to bring further information which might be of use, to put a stop to evil gossip and libels. He regarded himself as a poet might, my lord. And I? His most understanding audience. Lord Montfallcon sighed and let the coded note from Bohemia flutter down. Tinkler, in a fit of honesty, evidently against his own interests, burst out. He's murdered, my lord, I know. He's dead. All those wits and all that courage gone. Bring me proof of that, Tinkler, and I'll pay you very well. Or bring me disproof, and I'll pay you as much or more. Bring me Captain Quire alive to this room, Master Tinkler, and I'll guarantee a rich pension for the rest of your life. Tinkler lowered his head and then looked up quickly as if another thought had formed. Lord Montfallcon's smile was grim. And in the meantime, Tinkler, bring me what news you can from foreign sources. Your employment is secured. Tinkler bowed and retreated for the spider's door, to make his way along the very periphery of those forgotten vaults and catacombs, hidden in the palace as Hades himself might be hidden in heaven's very heart. While Tinkler broke with some relief into the damp, bright April air, Lord Montfallcon forced his hectic brain to dwell upon the matter of the forthcoming celebration of spring, at which the Queen must honour various worthies and placate a myriad of minor dignitaries. He was thankful that the main business would be left to Gallimari, master of the revels, and that only the diplomatic problems would be his. Such problems would be time-wasting, but at least they were not of any particular consequence. These public occasions were important in that they displayed the Queen's presence to the people, reassured them of her greatness, and Albion's security, wealth, and power. He found Master Wheldrake's verses, submitted to him yesterday, as he had requested, and carefully read them through. He had always been a trifle suspicious of Wheldrake, especially when the poet had first arrived at the palace, with a reputation of sensuousness and impiety. But there was no doubt Wheldrake's work had improved considerably under the influence and disciplines of the court. Montfallcon regretted he had always drawn up the spring honours, but he determined to ask the Queen next season to bestow at least a baronetcy upon one who seemed to understand so well the mysteries and accountabilities of the matter of Albion.